On Christmas Eve, I saw my daughter swap my pills and whisper, "This will shut him up forever." I pretended to take them, then collapsed 10 minutes later. What happened next revealed a terrifying contrast between who I trusted and who she'd become. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. The hallway mirror caught it all. I was reaching for the linen closet when I saw her reflection, my daughter Brooke, standing in my bedroom with my pill bottle in one hand and her phone pressed to her ear with the other. She was smiling, not the warm smile I remembered from her childhood, but something cold and calculated. "This will shut him up forever," she said into the phone, her voice light, almost cheerful. "Week, maybe 2 without the meds, and his heart won't hold up." My hand froze on the closet door. Through the mirror, I watched her dump my midaprolol tablets, the small orange pills that kept my heart rhythm stable, into her palm. Then she pulled out a different bottle from her purse. White tablets. She replaced mine with those, one by one, working quickly and efficiently. 35 years in pharmaceutical quality control taught me to spot a substitution from across a room. Those white tablets weren't medication, they were nothing. Candy, maybe. Sugar pills from some health store. My daughter was trying to kill me. The thought arrived in my mind with strange clarity, like a diagnosis I was reading on someone else's chart. Brooke Fisher Sullivan, age 38, attempting to murder her father on Christmas Eve. Motive, financial. Prognosis, she doesn't know he's watching. I stepped back silently, my heart hammering, not from the absence of medication, but from pure rage, the kind of rage that makes your vision sharp and your thoughts crystalline. I'd taken my real pills that morning from my workshop stash. I had maybe 14 more doses hidden down there. Enough time to figure this out. "Love you too," Brooke cooed into the phone before hanging up. She returned the bottle to my nightstand, positioning it exactly where it had been, then walked out of my bedroom wearing a bright smile. I gave her 10 seconds, then emerged from the hallway. "There you are, Dad," she kissed my cheek, the same cheek she'd kissed 1,000 times before. "Dinner's almost ready. Kyle's setting the table." Kyle Sullivan, my son-in-law for 9 years, appeared from the kitchen. 41 years old, expensive watch, cheap smile. "Hey, Frank, Merry Christmas Eve." "Merry Christmas," I replied, forcing warmth into my voice. Easy enough. I'd spent decades maintaining professional composure in meetings where millions of dollars were at stake. This was just another performance. Their son Ben, 19 and gangly, slouched on my couch scrolling through his phone. My grandson, was he part of this too? "Ben, come help set the table," Brooke called. We gathered around my dining room table, the same table where Brooke had done her homework 25 years ago. Kyle poured wine. Brooke served the roast chicken she'd brought over. Ben picked at his food. Everything looked normal. A family Christmas Eve. Except I could see my pill bottle sitting on the kitchen counter where Brooke had strategically placed it. A little reminder, a little prompt. "Dad, have you taken your evening meds?" she asked, concern painting her features. Such a caring daughter. "Not yet. Thank you for reminding me, sweetheart." I walked to the counter, picked up the bottle, and shook out one tablet. The white pill sat in my palm, innocent and lethal in its uselessness. I carried it back to the table with a glass of water. They were all watching me. I placed the pill under my tongue, took a sip of water, and swallowed. The pill stayed hidden in my mouth, pressed against my gum. Another sip. I brought my napkin to my lips and palmed the tablet, dropping it into my lap. "Good," Brooke said softly. "You need to stay on top of those." "Absolutely." I smiled at her. We ate. Kyle talked about some commercial real estate deal. Brooke complained about her marketing manager. Ben said nothing. I nodded and smiled and counted the minutes. 10 minutes after my fake pill, I let my fork clatter to my plate. "Dad?" Brooke's voice sharpened. I gripped the table edge, letting my face go slack. My pharmaceutical training had included emergency response procedures. I knew exactly how to mimic cardiac distress. I let out a gasping breath, clutched my chest, and slid from my chair onto the floor. "Frank!" Kyle's chair scraped back. I lay still, keeping my breathing shallow and controlled. My eyes were closed but not squeezed shut. Truly unconscious people don't clench their eyelids. Through my barely parted lashes, I saw Brooke and Kyle standing over me. "Call 911!" Brooke's voice cracked with panic. then Kyle's hand on her arm. Wait! A pause. 1 second. 2. Wait, Brooke whispered. Kyle, he's... Check his pulse, Kyle said, his voice dropping to something cold and measured. If he actually passed out, we call the ambulance and play concerned family. If he dies right now, too suspicious. Too fast. The words hung in the air above me like a verdict. Brooke knelt beside me. Her fingers found my wrist, pressing against the pulse point. My heart was racing, not from fake distress, but from the confirmation of what I'd seen in the mirror. She wasn't acting alone. This was planned, coordinated, premeditated. His pulse is strong, Brooke said, relief and something else. Disappointment in her voice. So he just passed out. Kyle's shoes appeared in my peripheral vision. Help me get him to the couch. Let him sleep it off. Ben, stop recording. Recording? My grandson had been filming this. They'd wanted evidence of my collapse. Documentation of my declining health for later. For when I actually died from the pills they weren't giving me. They lifted me, Kyle taking my shoulders, Brooke my feet. The indignity of it burned. But I kept my body limp as they dumped me onto my living room couch. A throw blanket landed over me. Should we really not call someone? Ben's voice, uncertain and young. He's fine, Kyle snapped. Just stressed. Old people pass out sometimes. I heard them move away toward the kitchen. Their voices dropped to whispers, but my hearing was still sharp. I caught fragments. Worked faster than we thought. Documents ready by the 28th. Don't panic now. I lay there in the darkness behind my closed eyelids, my mind racing through implications and evidence and the systematic betrayal of everything I'd built. The house they wanted, the money I'd saved, the life I'd lived. And I thought, you want to play this game? Fine. But you should know something, Brooke. You should know that your old man spent 3.5 decades identifying counterfeits and frauds. I made a career out of catching people who thought they were smarter than the system. You just made the biggest miscalculation of your life, and I'm going to make you pay for every single second of it. Brooke's fingers pressed against my wrist again, checking my pulse for the 3rd time. Satisfied I was still breathing, she straightened up. He's out cold, she said. Jesus, that was close. Close to what? The plan working? Kyle's voice carried irritation. We need this to look natural. Him dropping dead at dinner is the opposite of natural. I know. Brooke's footsteps paced the room. I just thought... I don't know what I thought. You thought you'd be free of the old man and swimming in his money by New Year's? Kyle laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Patience, babe. Another week or 2 of him missing those pills. His ticker gives out. We're golden. Ben cleared his throat. Did I get enough footage? Let me see. Kyle's voice moved closer to where I lay. I kept my breathing steady, deep, slightly rattling. The sound of an old man unconscious. Yeah, that's good. Shows him taking the pill, shows him collapsing. Date and timestamp. Perfect for when we need to prove he was declining. They were documenting my murder. A phone rang. Not a regular ringtone, but a FaceTime chime. It's Stacy, Brooke said. Hey, we're at my dad's. Everything okay? A woman's voice came through the speaker, crisp and professional. Kyle's sister, the notary. I'd met her twice. Just confirming we're still on schedule. I have the documents ready, notarized for the 28th. The new will puts everything in your name, Brooke. Once he's declared mentally incompetent or deceased, it's ironclad. Perfect, Kyle said. Ben's job tomorrow is to bring Marcus over. We need an independent witness to confirm Frank's been acting confused and forgetful. Marcus Johnson, from the country club? Stacy's voice held approval. Good choice. Respectable guy. No reason to doubt his testimony. They had forged my signature. They had created a fake will. They had witnesses lined up to testify I was losing my mind. What if he figures it out? Ben asked quietly. He won't, Kyle said with absolute certainty. The old man barely wears his glasses anymore. Probably can't even read the pill bottle labels. This is easy money, kid. Your college fund just got a massive upgrade. Easy money. They were killing me for easy money. I lay there for another 40 minutes while they discussed logistics, cleanup, and how to split the proceeds from selling my house. My house. The one I'd bought 32 years ago, where I'd raised Brooke after her mother died, where every room held memories they were auctioning off in whispers. Finally, I heard the front door open and close. Car doors. An engine starting. They were gone. I waited another 5 minutes, counting my heartbeats, before I opened my eyes. The living room was dark, except for the glow of the Christmas tree in the corner. I'd put that up 3 days ago, thinking we'd have a normal family celebration, thinking my daughter still loved me. I sat up slowly, my joints protesting. Not from age, but from lying rigid on the couch for nearly an hour. The throw blanket fell away. I stood steadier than they'd ever know and walked to the window. Their car, Kyle's black Mercedes, was gone. The rage I'd felt earlier had crystallized into something colder, clearer. I remembered last Christmas. Brooke had been warmer then, more present. She'd brought homemade cookies, and we'd watched old movies. When had that changed? When had the daughter who used to fall asleep on my shoulder turned into someone who could smile while poisoning her father? February. That's when it started. She'd asked about my finances, casual questions that felt off. How much was the house worth now? What kind of accounts did I have? Had I updated my will recently? I'd thought she was being practical, thoughtful even, making sure her old dad had his affairs in order, but she'd been calculating, assessing assets, deciding whether I was worth more dead than alive. Then March. Kyle had started coming around more, always with questions about my health. Was I feeling okay? Any chest pains? Maybe I should see a cardiologist, just to be safe. He'd been planting seeds, creating a narrative of declining health, setting up the story they'd tell after I died mysteriously in my sleep. I walked down to my basement workshop, my sanctuary, the space where I'd spent countless hours restoring antique clocks, my hands steady and my mind focused. The shelves held dozens of timepieces, each one a puzzle I'd solved, each one brought back to life through patience and precision. My real medication was in a small safe behind my workbench. I'd moved it there 6 months ago when I noticed my pills seemed to be disappearing faster than they should. At the time, I thought I was being paranoid. Forgetful, maybe. Now I knew better. I opened the safe and took out my actual metoprolol bottle. 14 doses left. I swallowed one with water from the basement sink, feeling the tablet go down properly this time. Then I pulled out my old contact notebook. Actual paper, because I'd never trusted keeping everything digital. The pages were worn, the entries written in my careful handwriting. Names and numbers accumulated over 35 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I flipped to the R section and found what I was looking for. Sharon Reeves, private investigator. We'd worked together on a case years ago when someone was counterfeiting prescription drugs in our supply chain. She'd been thorough, discreet, and absolutely relentless in tracking down the truth. I checked my watch. 11:15 p.m. Late, but not too late for this. I dialed her number. It rang 3 times before a professional voice answered, Reeves Investigations. Sharon, this is Franklin Fisher. I don't know if you remember me, but... Frank, of course I remember. What's wrong? Something in my voice must have given me away. I need your help, I said, and found that my hands were shaking. The rage was still there, but underneath it was something else. Grief, maybe. The death of the daughter I thought I had. Tomorrow. It's an urgent family matter. I can meet you at 9. My office, 1200 Southwest 6th Avenue, Suite 405. Thank you. Frank? Her voice softened slightly. Whatever it is, we'll handle it, I promise. I hung up and stood in my workshop, surrounded by the ticking of a dozen restored clocks, each one keeping perfect time, each mechanism working exactly as designed. They thought I was a weak old man ready to be wound down and discarded. They were about to learn what I'd spent my entire career doing, identifying fraud, documenting evidence, and dismantling schemes built on lies. The clocks ticked on around me, marking seconds into minutes into hours. Time was on my side now. I had 14 doses of medication. I had Sharon Reeves, and I had something my daughter and her husband didn't have. I had the truth. And in the end, the truth is what destroys you. Sharon Reeves' office on the 5th floor of 1200 Southwest 6th Avenue was exactly what I expected. Functional, professional, and reassuringly ordinary. The kind of place where facts mattered more than feelings. Show me what you have, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I pulled the pill bottle from my coat pocket and set it on her desk. The orange prescription container looked innocent enough, but inside were those white tablets, sugar pills masquerading as life-saving medication. Sharon picked up the bottle. tilted it toward the light, then opened it and shook one tablet into her palm. She examined it for a moment before looking up at me. "When did you discover the substitution?" "Christmas Eve. I saw my daughter Brooke make the switch through a hallway mirror." "And you're certain these aren't your prescribed metoprolol?" "I spent 35 years in pharmaceutical quality control. I can identify a counterfeit from across a room." She nodded slowly, returning the tablet to the bottle. "Tell me everything?" So I did. The whole sordid story, the phone conversation I'd overheard, the fake collapse, the 40 minutes lying on my couch while they discussed dividing up my estate, like vultures picking over a corpse. Sharon listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "This is attempted murder, Mr. Fisher. You understand that?" "Frank? And yes, I understand exactly what it is. We need documentation, solid, irrefutable evidence that will hold up in court." She tapped her pen against the notebook. "Here's what I propose. We install surveillance cameras in your home. It's your property, so it's completely legal. We record their conversations, document their actions, build a case that's airtight. How much? Initial installation and the first week of monitoring will be $3,500. If this goes longer, we'll discuss additional fees." I pulled out my checkbook, the physical kind because I'd never trusted online banking entirely, and wrote the check. My hand was steady, steadier than it had been in days. "When can you start?" "The 30th, Sunday. Your family will be out shopping for New Year's, I assume?" "They will be now." I smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'll make sure of it." The next 2 days were a performance worthy of an award. I shuffled when I walked. I forgot words mid-sentence. I stared at the television with blank confusion, as if I couldn't quite remember how the remote worked. Brooke and Kyle watched me with satisfaction, poorly concealed behind expressions of concern. "Dad, are you feeling okay?" Brooke asked on the morning of the 30th, her voice dripping with false worry. I blinked at her slowly, as if focusing was difficult. Yes, just tired. You should rest more. We're going to head out for a few hours. New Year's shopping, you know how it is. Will you be all right, here alone?" "Of course. I'll just watch some television." The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, Sharon arrived in an unmarked van. She worked quickly and efficiently, installing 4 micro cameras in strategic locations. One behind the living room bookshelf, angled to capture conversations on the couch. One above the kitchen cabinets, hidden in a decorative basket. One in my study, tucked behind a picture frame on the shelf. And one in the hallway near my bedroom, disguised as a smoke detector. "These are motion-activated and sound-activated," Sharon explained as she worked. "They'll record everything and upload to a secure cloud server. Even if they find the cameras and destroy them, we'll have the footage." "They're smarter than I gave them credit for," I said, watching her calibrate the hallway camera. "I need to be careful." "You need to be patient." She climbed down from the stepladder. "Let them talk. Let them plan. Let them incriminate themselves with their own words." After she left, I practiced my role again, the confused old man slowly deteriorating. It wasn't difficult. I just had to imagine what they wanted to see and give it to them. When they returned laden with shopping bags, I was sitting in my recliner, staring at a nature documentary I'd rewound to the beginning 3 times. "Dad?" Brooke set her bags down. "Have you been watching this the whole time?" "What? Oh, the penguins. Yes." I smiled vaguely. "They're very determined creatures." Kyle smirked. I saw it from the corner of my eye, that little upturn of his mouth that said everything about what he thought of me. That I was pathetic, forgettable, already gone. He had no idea he was being recorded. On January 2nd, I set my trap. Sharon had opened a savings account in my name, completely legal, completely empty except for the minimum balance. But on paper, with the right letterhead and account numbers, it looked legitimate. It looked like I had $430,000 tucked away that no one knew about. I left the bank statement on my study desk, positioned just so. Then I announced I was taking a nap and shuffled off to my bedroom. Through the crack in my door, I watched Brooke enter my study. She glanced toward my bedroom, listening for any sound of movement, then picked up the statement. Her eyes widened. She pulled out her phone and photographed the document, her hands shaking slightly. The camera above the picture frame captured everything. That evening I lay in bed, listening through the wall, as Brooke and Kyle talked in the guest room they'd been staying in more and more frequently. 430,000, Brooke hissed. He has another 430,000, and he never told me. Calm down, Kyle said. This is good news. More money for us. But why would he hide it? Unless he doesn't trust... He's old. He's paranoid. Probably forgot he even told you about the other accounts. Kyle's voice was smooth, convincing. This changes nothing except the final number. We stick to the plan. Later that night, they called Stacy on FaceTime. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. The cameras would catch every word. 3 days later, I sat across from Douglas Hampton in his 9th-floor office, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. He was 61, gray-haired, and had the kind of face that had seen too many betrayals to be surprised by another one. I knew your wife, he said, studying the tablet Sharon had provided with the surveillance footage. Catherine was a remarkable woman. I'm sorry for what you're going through. Just tell me if it's enough. He watched the video from January 2nd, Brooke photographing the bank statement, the phone call with Stacy discussing the additional assets, Kyle's comment about sticking to the plan. Then he watched the Christmas Eve footage from my security system, which had captured their arrival and the beginning of their conspiracy. It's attempted murder, Douglas said finally. Clear premeditation. The substituted pills, the forged will. Stacy mentioned the plan to document your supposed incompetence. This is conspiracy to commit murder with aggravating factors. But we need more. We need them to explicitly discuss their intent. We need documentation of the forged documents. We need them to hang themselves with their own words, so thoroughly that no defense attorney can argue coincidence or misunderstanding. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Can you continue the act? Can you keep playing the declining old man while they tighten the noose around their own necks? I thought about Brooke at age 7, crying when her hamster died, and me holding her while she sobbed into my shoulder. I thought about the Christmas when she was 16 and gave me a hand-carved picture frame she'd made in woodshop, so proud of herself. Then I thought about her standing in my bedroom, smiling while she talked about shutting me up forever. Yes, I said, I can do that. The transformation was already happening. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my mind worked now, calculating, strategic, cold. The part of me that wanted to cry for my lost daughter was being buried under something harder. Something that understood survival meant becoming the predator instead of the prey. On January 8th, I made an appointment with Dr. Patricia Mendez, my family physician. The appointment itself was real. I needed documentation that my heart was healthy, that I'd been taking my actual medication all along. But I'd called her office 3 days earlier and explained the situation in careful clinical terms. You're telling me your family is trying to kill you? Dr. Mendez had said on the phone, her voice tight with shock. I'm telling you I need a complete cardiac workup with documentation of results, for legal purposes. She understood. The examination was thorough. EKG, blood pressure monitoring, blood work to check medication levels in my system. Everything showed exactly what I knew it would. A 67-year-old man in remarkably good health for his age, with properly managed cardiac conditions. Your metoprolol levels are perfect, Dr. Mendez said, reviewing the results. You've been compliant with your medication regimen. I need that in writing, dated and signed. She printed the report and handed it to me in a sealed envelope. Frank, if someone is actually trying to harm you, it's being handled, but thank you. At home, Brooke was cooking dinner, or rather preparing what she called dinner, a small grilled chicken breast with steamed vegetables and no seasoning. No butter, no oil, barely enough to sustain a child, let alone a grown man. Heart healthy, she announced brightly when I shuffled into the kitchen. The doctor said you need to watch your diet, remember? I'd never told her any doctor said that. She was inventing advice from imaginary medical professionals to justify slowly starving me. That's very thoughtful, I said, letting my hand tremble slightly as I reached for the plate. Kyle appeared in the doorway. Hey, Frank, we need to talk about something. Here it comes, I thought. Sharon had warned me they'd push for financial control soon. Sure, Kyle. What is it? Your finances. Bills, accounts, that kind of thing. He leaned against the counter, trying to look casual. If something happens to you, if you get sicker, it would help if Brooke had legal authority to manage things. Power of attorney. Simple paperwork. I let confusion cross my face. Power of... I don't know. That sounds complicated. It's not. It's just a safety measure. His smile was pure, practiced charm. We want to help you, Frank. We want to make sure everything's taken care of. I need to think about it. Something flickered in Kyle's eyes. Frustration, maybe. Impatience. Sure, take your time. But you should probably decide soon. That night, the cameras caught their conversation in the living room. I was supposedly asleep, but I lay in my bed with my door cracked, listening to the audio feed Sharon had given me access to on my phone. He's stalling, Kyle said. Maybe he suspects something. Brooke's voice was tight with anxiety. Impossible. Look at him. He can barely remember what day it is. He's just stubborn. Then we moved to Plan B. That was Stacy's voice, tinny through the phone speaker. If he won't give you financial control and he's not dying fast enough, we restrict his food intake even more. Claim it's doctor's orders. His body will weaken. The heart will follow. What if investigators question it later? Brooke asked. They won't. Old people die from heart failure every day, especially old people with pre-existing conditions who refuse to follow their prescribed medication regimen. Except I was following my prescribed regimen, just not the sugar pills they thought I was taking. On January 15th, the cameras captured the most damning conversation yet. Brooke and Kyle thought I was at a doctor's appointment. I'd told them I was going, but I'd canceled it and was actually in my workshop, monitoring the live feed on my laptop. If he holds out past February, I'm going to lose my mind, Brooke said, pacing the living room. We owe $127,000 in debt. Collectors are calling every day. The credit cards are maxed. I know. Kyle grabbed her shoulders. But we can't rush this. It has to look natural. How is him starving to death natural? Heart patients are supposed to restrict their diet. We'll say he was following his cardiologist's orders. We'll say he became paranoid about eating too much. We'll make it sound like he did this to himself. The camera caught every word. Every calculated murderous word. On January 18th, I signed their fake power of attorney. Sharon had prepared it, a document that looked official but had no legal standing whatsoever. Stacy notarized it with her official seal, not knowing Sharon was parked across the street, photographing the entire transaction through a telephoto lens. There you go, Dad, Brooke said, her smile bright and empty. Now we can help you with everything. Thank you, sweetheart. I smiled back, playing the grateful, confused old man. Inside, I was counting the days until I'd watch her face when she realized exactly how thoroughly she'd destroyed her own life. By January 20th, Sharon's server held 47 hours of footage, discussions of my death, plans to forge documents, calculations of how to split the money, Stacy's legal advice on avoiding detection, Ben's reluctant participation, coerced by his father's threats. That evening, I sat in my workshop, headphones on, reviewing the most recent recordings. Brooke's voice came through clearly. If he stretches this out another month, I'll go insane. These debts are eating us alive. I paused the playback and sat in the silence of my workshop, surrounded by the ticking of antique clocks I'd restored over the years. Each one had been broken when I found it. Each one had seemed beyond repair. But with patience, with the right tools, with careful attention to every tiny mechanism, I'd brought them back to life. I understood then, with perfect clarity, what needed to happen next. They thought they were hunting me. They thought I was the helpless prey, stumbling toward the inevitable. They were wrong. I was the one who'd been setting traps since Christmas Eve. I was the one who'd been documenting every crime, every conspiracy, every whispered plan to end my life. And when the moment came, when I had every piece of evidence I needed, I would watch them realize that the old man they'd underestimated had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. The clocks ticked around me, marking time with mechanical precision. Time was all I needed, and I had plenty of it. The cameras had been recording for 3 weeks when Ben found the first one. I was in my workshop when my phone buzzed with Sharon's emergency alert. The motion sensors had detected unusual activity in the living room. Someone was examining the picture frame where we'd hidden one of the cameras. I pulled up the live feed on my laptop just in time to see Ben, my 19-year-old grandson lifting the frame and peering behind it. His face filled the screen as he spotted the tiny lens. "Mom! Dad!" His voice carried through the house. "You need to see this." Within seconds, Brooke and Kyle appeared. I watched them crowd around Ben, staring at the camera he'd exposed. "He's recording us?" Kyle's face went red. "That sneaky old bastard!" "Calm down." Brooke grabbed his arm, but her voice was tight with panic. "Maybe it's old. Maybe he doesn't even know it's there." "Check the house," Kyle ordered. "All of it, now." I minimized the laptop screen and climbed the stairs slowly, making sure my footsteps announced my arrival. When I entered the living room, they were standing in a tight cluster, the picture frame disassembled on the coffee table. "Dad!" Brooke's voice was too bright, too sharp. "We found something interesting." I let confusion cross my face. "What's that, sweetheart?" Kyle stepped forward, holding up the camera. "This. Care to explain why you're spying on your own family?" I studied it like I'd never seen it before, then shook my head slowly. "Camera? I don't... Oh." I touched my forehead. I remember now, last winter. There were break-ins in the neighborhood. 4 houses on this block alone. I had a security company install cameras. "Last winter?" Brooke's eyes narrowed. "February, I think, or March. The Hendersons next door got robbed in January." All true. The Hendersons had been robbed. I just hadn't installed cameras back then. I forgot all about them. Kyle's jaw worked. He wanted to argue, to accuse, but he had nothing concrete. "Where are the recordings?" "Recordings?" I blinked at him. "I don't know. The company handles all that. Or maybe there aren't any. I can't remember if I kept paying for the service." It was beautiful, watching them try to decide if I was genuinely confused or playing them. The truth was somewhere in between. I was neither as incompetent as I pretended, nor as oblivious as they hoped. "We're going to check the rest of the house," Kyle said flatly. "Of course. Make yourselves at home." I shuffled to my recliner and picked up the remote, fumbling with the buttons. They found 2 more cameras over the next hour, the ones in the kitchen and my study. They didn't find the 4th one in the hallway, which Sharon had hidden inside an actual smoke detector she'd replaced. That one kept recording. I called Sharon from my workshop that night. "They found 3 of them." "I know. I watched the whole thing." Her voice was calm. "Don't worry. All the important footage is already backed up on 3 separate servers. Even if they destroy every camera, we have everything we need. They're going to move faster now. They're scared." "Good. Scared people make mistakes." She was right. Over the next week, Brooke and Kyle's desperation became palpable. On January 28th, Kyle brought someone to the house, a thin man with greasy hair who looked like he'd learned his tech skills in places I didn't want to think about. "This is Derek," Kyle introduced him with false casualness. "Old friend of mine. He's good with computers." Derek spent 2 hours going through my laptop and phone. I sat in the living room, pretending to watch television while he worked. He found nothing, of course. All my communications with Sharon were on a burner phone locked in my workshop safe, and the computer held nothing but online chess games and news websites. "Clean," Derek muttered to Kyle. "If he's got recordings, they're not here." After they left, I ate the dinner Brooke prepared, a piece of plain grilled chicken and steamed broccoli. No butter, no salt. Barely 300 calories total. "Heart healthy," she announced cheerfully. I was losing weight rapidly now, 6 pounds in 7 days. My pants hung loose, and my shirts looked like they belonged to someone larger. But it was worth it. Every pound I lost was another piece of evidence that they were starving me. On February 3rd, Brooke launched her new strategy. She started cooking for me 3 times a day, small portions of bland food, always delivered with a smile and a story about how Dr. Patel recommended this specific diet. Dr. Patel had recommended no such thing. She'd prescribed a normal cardiac diet with reasonable portions. But Brooke's version was designed to weaken me, to make my body give out before my will did. I ate what she gave me. Then, late at night, I supplemented with protein bars and nuts from my workshop stash. Enough to keep from actually collapsing, not enough to stop the visible weight loss that satisfied their murderous timeline. A week later, Sharon called with an update. 47 hours of recorded conversations. Discussions of the fake will, the forged power of attorney, their financial motives, specific mentions of withholding your medication and food. It's overwhelming evidence. Is it enough for court? I showed Douglas the highlights. He says it's enough to convict on attempted murder charges. She paused. But he wants one more piece. The final confirmation, them explicitly stating their plan to kill you and divide the assets. Get that on recording, and there's no defense attorney alive who can save them. Then I'll get it. Frank, you need to be careful. They're getting desperate. I looked at my reflection in the workshop mirror. Gaunt face, hollow cheeks, skin pale from weeks of indoor confinement. I looked like exactly what they wanted. A dying old man, too weak to fight back. Don't worry, I said. I know exactly what I'm doing. February 12th. Breakfast. I'd planned this moment for weeks. Brooke was scrambling eggs. 1 egg, no butter, no cheese. Kyle sat at the table scrolling through his phone. Ben was still asleep upstairs. I sat down, picked up my fork, and let it fall from my fingers. It clattered against the plate. Sorry, I mumbled. Hands are shaky this morning. Then I clutched my chest. It wasn't hard to fake. I just remembered Christmas Eve. Remembered that moment when I'd realized my own daughter wanted me dead. The pain was real enough. I gasped, grabbed the table edge, and let myself slide from the chair. The floor hit hard. I lay there, eyes wide, breathing in short gasps. This time I didn't close my eyes. Cardiac patients often stay conscious during the initial stages of an event. Frank! Brooke's scream was genuine panic. She dropped beside me, her hands on my face. Kyle, call 911. For a moment, just a moment, I saw real fear in her eyes. Fear that I was actually dying before they'd secured the forged documents. Fear that I'd die too soon and the death would look suspicious. Not fear for me. Fear for her plan. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes. The EMTs loaded me onto a stretcher while Brooke held my hand and cried. Kyle followed in his car, his expression grim. At the hospital, I was taken to the ER where Dr. James Rodriguez was waiting. I'd met with him 2 days earlier, shown him the evidence of what my family was doing, explained what I needed. He'd been horrified and immediately agreed to help. The tests showed exactly what they were supposed to show. No heart attack. My cardiac enzymes were normal. My EKG was unchanged from baseline. But Dr. Rodriguez diagnosed me with a severe anxiety attack brought on by stress, which was serious enough to warrant observation but not serious enough to suggest attempted murder. We're keeping you for 48 hours, he told Brooke and Kyle in the hallway outside my room. I could hear them through the partially open door. He needs rest and monitoring. The stress on his system is significant. But he'll be okay? Brooke asked. With proper care and reduced stress, yes. I lay in the hospital bed, tubes running from my arm to an IV drip, monitoring wires attached to my chest. Through half-closed eyes, I watched Brooke sit beside my bed. She thought I was sleeping. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the IV, the monitors, my pale face against white pillows. Building her narrative. Look how sick he is. Look how much we care. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I executed the next phase. While Brooke was in the cafeteria getting coffee, I placed the bank statement on my bedside table. The same fake document about the $430,000 account. Just visible under a magazine like I'd been reviewing my finances and got tired. Brooke returned with 2 coffees and a muffin. She set them down, glanced at me, still sleeping, and her eyes landed on the paper. I watched through my lashes as she picked it up, her hand trembling slightly. She read it once, twice, then pulled out her phone and photographed it. Her face had gone white, then flushed red. After she left, I heard her in the hallway, her voice tight and excited on the phone with Kyle. He has more. Another $430,000. Why wouldn't he tell us? What else is he hiding? The greed in her voice was almost funny. Almost. I was discharged on February 16th. At home, I played the invalid perfectly, shuffling from room to room, accepting help to climb stairs, fumbling with simple tasks. Brooke was solicitous to the point of parody, fluffing my pillows, bringing me meals, checking my medication. The medication she'd replaced with sugar pills for the 3rd time. On February 20th, Sharon sent me a text. Coffee shop, Main and Oak. They're there now. I pulled up the live feed she sent. Video from her phone, hidden in her purse, on the table beside her. Kyle and Stacy sat across from each other, voices low but clear on Sharon's directional microphone. If he dies now, we're clear, Stacy was saying. She looked nervous, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup. All the documents are in place. The will is notarized. Everything looks legal. Then we move this week, Kyle said. Brooke stops giving him the real pills entirely. No more supplements, no more real medication. His heart can't hold up much longer under this stress. Sharon's camera captured every word, every gesture, every incriminating statement. 5 days later, February 25th, I confronted Brooke in the kitchen. I'd been waiting for the right moment, the right audience. Kyle was in the living room. The hidden hallway camera, the one they'd never found, was recording. I held up my pill bottle, my hand trembling. Brooke, these pills, they look different again. She turned from the sink, dish towel in hand, and for just a second her mask slipped. I saw cold calculation in her eyes before the concerned daughter expression slid back into place. Dad, that's the new prescription from the pharmacy. The pills are from a different manufacturer. It's the same medication. Are you sure? Because You're being paranoid. Her voice had an edge now, sharp and impatient. The stress is making you imagine things. I let tears fill my eyes, half genuine, half performance. I'm not crazy. No one said you were crazy. She softened her tone, but it was mechanical, rehearsed. You're just confused. It happens with age, Dad. We understand. The camera caught all of it. Her dismissiveness. My distress. The pills in my shaking hand. 3 days later, February 28th, they gathered in my living room. I was supposedly asleep in my bedroom, but I lay awake, wearing the wireless earbuds Sharon had given me, listening to the audio feed from the baby monitor she'd hidden in my ceiling fan. Brooke, Kyle, and Stacy. All 3 of them. Final planning session. 2 weeks maximum, Kyle said. Without the meds, minimal food, his heart gives out. When he's gone, Stacy processes the will within 3 days. Ben confirms Grandpa was incompetent these last few months. We sell the house by summer, split $1.2 million 3 ways. What about Ben? Stacy asked. He gets his college paid for. That's his cut. And if anyone questions the death, they won't, Brooke said. Her voice was cold, businesslike. He's 67 with a cardiac history. Old people die. It's what they do. I lay in the darkness, listening to my daughter discuss my death with the same tone she'd used to discuss selling a used car. The baby monitor recorded every word, every calculation, every detail of their plan to murder me and divide my estate. In my workshop, safe was a growing file. Surveillance recordings, financial documents, medical records, witness statements. 47 hours had become 89 hours. The sugar pills Brooke had substituted were in evidence bags. Dr. Mendez's health reports proved I'd been taking real medication all along. Sharon's photographs showed Stacy notarizing forged documents. I had everything, every piece of evidence needed to destroy them. And on March 1st, I would begin delivering justice. March 1st. Douglas Hampton's office. 9th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. 89 hours of video and audio, Douglas said, spreading folders across his conference table. Documentation of pill substitution. Forged legal documents, explicit discussions of murder for financial gain. We have everything. Sharon sat beside me, her laptop open to timestamps and transcripts. The February 28th recording is the crown jewel. They discuss timeline, method, division of assets. It's textbook conspiracy to commit murder. I looked at the evidence, months of my life reduced to folders and files, months of playing a dying man while documenting my would-be killers. Time to strike, I said. 2 days later, I hired Gerald Stone, 58 years old, criminal defense attorney with a specialty in attempted murder cases. His fee was $25,000, paid from my savings account. The real one, not the fake bait Brooke had photographed. I've reviewed the evidence, Gerald said in his office. This is one of the strongest cases I've seen. But we need to be strategic. The family will claim entrapment, manipulation, that you orchestrated everything. I documented criminals committing crimes in my own home. That's not entrapment. That's evidence gathering. He smiled grimly. Exactly what I'll tell the prosecutor. On March 7th, I walked into the kitchen for breakfast and watched Brooke's face change. She was at the stove, scrambling eggs. Real eggs this time, with butter and cheese, now that she thought I was close to death. She turned, saw me, and froze. I wasn't shuffling, wasn't trembling. My color was good, my posture straight. I looked like a healthy 67-year-old man instead of a corpse in waiting. "Dad?" Her voice cracked slightly. "You look better." "I feel better, sweetheart." I sat at the table, movements fluid and controlled. Funny thing about the human body. When you give it actual medication instead of sugar pills, it recovers remarkably well. The color drained from her face like water from a broken glass. Kyle appeared in the doorway. "What did you just say?" I smiled at him. Not a warm smile. Not a kind smile. The smile of a man who's been 3 steps ahead the entire time. I said it's amazing how well I'm doing now that I'm taking my real metoprolol instead of the candy you've been substituting for the past 2 months. Brooke's hand went to her throat. Kyle's jaw clenched. I could see them processing, calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and when I'd figured it out. "I don't know what you're talking about," Brooke said, but her voice shook. "Of course you don't. Just like you don't know about the forged will, the fake power of attorney documents, or the plan to split $1.2 million after my conveniently timed death." Kyle took a step forward. "You're losing your mind, old man." "Actually, my mind is quite sharp. Sharp enough to have been recording every conversation you've had in this house since December 30th. That stopped him cold. "We found those cameras," he said. "You found 3. You missed one. And even if you'd found them all, the recordings were uploading to a secure server in real time. Every word, every plan, every discussion of how to murder me for my house and savings." Brooke sat down heavily, her legs apparently unable to support her. "You're making this up." "Am I? Then you won't mind coming to a family meeting tomorrow evening. 6 p.m., right here. I've invited a few people who'd be very interested in hearing what you have to say." That night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. After 2 months of playing victim, I was finally stepping into the role I should have held all along, the man in control. March 10th, 6 p.m. They arrived thinking it would be another intervention, another attempt to push me towards signing over control of my finances. Brooke, Kyle, Stacy, and Ben, all 4 of them walking into my living room, expecting to find a confused old man. Instead, they found a tribunal. Douglas Hampton and Gerald Stone stood near the fireplace, both in suits, both carrying briefcases. Sharon Reeves had set up a projector and screen, and near the door, Detective John Ramirez and Detective Patricia Cross from Portland Police Bureau stood with notebooks and badges clearly visible. "What is this?" Kyle's voice was sharp. "Sit down," I said. Not requested. Ordered. They sat. Even Kyle, who looked like he wanted to bolt. The detectives moved to block the doorway. Casually, professionally, but unmistakably. "On Christmas Eve," I began, "I witnessed my daughter Brooke substituting my heart medication with sugar pills. I heard her tell someone on the phone that this would shut me up forever, and that my heart would fail within a week or 2. Brooke started to protest. Douglas raised a hand. "Please don't interrupt, Ms. Fisher-Sullivan. We have evidence." Sharon pressed a button. The projector came to life. On screen, Brooke and Kyle in my living room, December 24th, my supposedly unconscious body on the couch. Audio crystal clear through the hidden cameras. Kyle's voice, "If he dies right now, it's too suspicious. Wait until the pills have time to work." Brooke's voice, "What if he noticed something?" Kyle's voice, "Impossible. The old man barely knows what day it is." I watched their faces as they watched themselves. Brooke went white, then red, then white again. Kyle's hands curled into fists. Stacy, who hadn't yet realized she was on the recordings too, looked confused and frightened. The video continued. January conversations about the forged will. February discussions of Plan B, starving me until my weakened body gave out. Stacy's careful advice about making everything look legal. Ben's reluctant participation, documenting my supposed decline. And finally, February 28th, the smoking gun. Kyle's voice, 2 weeks maximum, without meds, minimal food, his heart gives out. We sell the house by summer, split $1.2 million. Brooke's voice, and if investigators ask questions, Stacy's voice, they won't. Old people die from heart failure constantly. When the video ended, silence filled the room like poison gas. Brooke's voice cracked. That's illegal wiretapping, illegal surveillance. You can't. It's Mr. Fisher's private residence, Douglas said calmly. He has every legal right to install security cameras in his own home. The recordings were made on his property, of conversations happening in his house. Nothing illegal about it. Kyle stood up. We're leaving. Detective Ramirez stepped forward. Actually, sir, we'd like you to stay. We have some questions about what we just witnessed. We don't have to answer anything, Kyle snarled. You're right, Detective Cross said. But we'll be submitting this evidence to the district attorney's office tomorrow morning. You might want to get your story straight before that happens. Over the next hour, the detectives questioned each of them separately. Ben broke first, crying in my study, confessing that his father had pressured him to document my decline, that he'd felt trapped and scared. He was 19, manipulated by people he should have been able to trust. Stacy tried to play innocent. She was just a notary, just doing her job, didn't know about any murder plot. Then Sharon pulled up the coffee shop recording from February 20th. Stacy's voice discussing how they'd be in the clear if I died soon, how all the documents were perfectly forged and legally notarized. She stopped talking after that. Brooke and Kyle refused to say anything without lawyers present. The detectives told them they'd be in touch. As they left, all four of them, shocked and desperate, and finally understanding what they'd walked into, I stood by the door. Brooke turned to me, tears streaming. Dad, please, don't, I said quietly. Don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you decided my life was worth less than my bank account. She flinched like I'd struck her. They left. The house felt cleaner without the minute. March 16th. The call came at 7 in the morning. Multnomah County District Attorney's Office has filed charges, Gerald Stone said. Attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, forgery, and fraud. Warrants issued for Brooke Fisher Sullivan, Kyle Sullivan, and Stacy Sullivan Martinez. And Ben? Plea agreement. He cooperates fully, testifies against his parents, and he gets probation plus community service. The DA believes he was coerced. By noon, all three were in custody. Bail set at $500,000 for Brooke, $750,000 for Kyle, $350,000 for Stacy. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Kyle's family, parents, siblings, extended network, pooled resources and posted bond through a bail bondsman. $200,000, 10% of the combined bail for Kyle and Brooke. They walked out of jail on March 18th, and the real fight began. March 22nd, Brooke hired William Harrison, a criminal defense attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics and expensive fees. $50,000 paid by mortgaging Kyle's parents' house. Harrison immediately went on the offensive. Your father orchestrated this entire situation, he told reporters on the courthouse steps. He created a narrative, manipulated evidence, and entrapped his own family. This is elder abuse in reverse. A vindictive old man destroying his daughter's life because she tried to help him. The story hit local news. Suddenly, I was the villain, the paranoid pharmaceutical exec who'd weaponized his professional knowledge against his own family. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted statements. Old colleagues called to ask if the accusations were true. The narrative was shifting, and I could feel the ground becoming unstable. Let them spin, Gerald advised. We have evidence. Facts don't care about PR. But facts needed context, and context required explanation. On April 5th, the preliminary hearing, Judge Margaret O'Connor presiding. Harrison came out swinging. Your Honor, Franklin Fisher is a retired pharmaceutical executive with extensive knowledge of medication, surveillance, and legal procedures. He didn't just discover a crime. He engineered one. He knew his pills were substituted, but continued to create situations designed to entrap his family into increasingly incriminating statements. Gerald stood. Your Honor, the defense is arguing that Mr. Fisher should have allowed himself to be murdered rather than gather evidence against his killers. He had every right to protect his own life and document criminal activity in his home. The recordings were made without consent, on private property he owns, with equipment he installed, recording people who were actively conspiring to kill him. Harrison produced documents, medical records showing I'd been healthy all along, bank statements for the fake account Sharon had opened, transcripts of my meetings with Sharon and Douglas, where we'd strategized about catching them in the act. "This man created a fiction," Harrison said, "and then filmed his family believing it. That's entrapment." Judge O'Connor studied the evidence. The courtroom was silent, except for the scratch of her pen on legal pads. "The question," she finally said, "is whether Mr. Fisher's actions constitute legitimate self-defense and evidence gathering, or whether they cross the line into entrapment and provocation." My heart pounded. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt genuine fear. What if she dismissed the charges? What if the judge decided I'd gone too far? However, Judge O'Connor continued, the evidence shows that the defendants initiated the criminal conspiracy without any prompting from Mr. Fisher. He did not suggest they substitute his medication. He did not encourage them to forge documents. He simply documented crimes they were already committing. Motion to dismiss denied. This case will proceed to trial. The relief was physical. I felt my shoulders drop, my breath return. But Harrison wasn't done. As we left the courthouse, he cornered me in the hallway, Gerald and Sharon flanking me protectively. 3 years probation, he said. Fraud and forgery charges only. Attempted murder dropped. Your daughter does no jail time. Pays $150,000 in restitution, and you get your money and your revenge. Everyone walks away. I looked at him, then at Gerald. What do you think? Gerald asked. I think, I said slowly, that they tried to kill me, not defraud me, not forge documents, kill me, murder me for money. And I think they should face the consequences of attempted murder, not some reduced charge that makes them look like they made a paperwork error. You're sentencing your own daughter to prison, Harrison said. No, I replied. She sentenced herself the moment she decided I was worth more dead than alive. I'm just making sure justice is served. Harrison's face hardened. Then we'll see you in trial. And I promise you, Mr. Fisher, we'll make you look like the monster you are. He walked away. Brooke and Kyle followed, both of them shooting me looks of pure hatred. Sharon touched my arm. You okay? I'm fine. And I was, because I'd expected this. Expected them to fight back, to try to twist the narrative, to make me the villain. But I had something they didn't have. The truth. 89 hours of recordings. Medical records proving my health. Expert testimony about how metoprolol withdrawal would have killed me. Ben's cooperation, Stacy's coffee shop conversation. They could hire the most expensive lawyers in Oregon. They could spin stories for the media. They could try to paint me as a manipulative mastermind who'd set them up. But the evidence didn't lie. The recordings didn't lie. On April 20th, Harrison made one final offer. Plead to lesser charges. Avoid trial. Brooke and Kyle get probation and community service. I turned it down. I want a trial, I told Gerald. I want 12 citizens to hear what they did, see the evidence, and make a judgment, because I know what that judgment will be. Gerald smiled grimly. Then we go to trial. Jury selection starts April 25th. I went home to my house, the house they'd wanted to inherit, to sell, to divide. I walked through rooms where they'd plotted my death. I sat in the chair where I'd played dying while they planned my funeral, and I waited for justice. April 25th, the trial began. Multnomah County Courthouse. Courtroom 4C. 12 jurors sat in the box. 6 men, 6 women, ages ranging from mid-30s to early 70s. People who understood what family meant. People who'd probably trusted their own children and couldn't imagine being betrayed the way I had been. Deputy District Attorney Rachel Morgan was 44, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for prosecuting domestic violence cases with surgical precision. She'd told me during our preparation, juries understand greed, they understand family betrayal. We're going to make sure they understand exactly what your daughter and son-in-law tried to do. April 28th, I took the stand. The courtroom was silent as I walked to the witness box. Brooke sat at the defense table, her face carefully composed into an expression of wounded innocence. Kyle beside her, his jaw set in defiance, both of them in expensive suits, playing the role of respectable citizens wrongly accused. I told the jury everything. The mirror on Christmas Eve, the substituted pills, the 40 minutes on the couch listening to them discuss my death like a business transaction, the cameras, the recordings, the months of documented conspiracy. Rachel presented the evidence methodically. The original pill bottle with sugar tablets, my medical records proving cardiac health, the bank statement for the fake account, Sharon's surveillance footage, the audio recordings of their planning sessions. "Mr. Fisher," Rachel asked, "when you discovered your medication had been replaced, why didn't you immediately call the police?" "Because I needed proof. Without evidence, it would be my word against theirs. A confused old man making accusations against his devoted daughter and son-in-law. Who would believe me?" The jury looked at Brooke. Several faces showed understanding. They'd considered the same question. Then Harrison's cross-examination. He approached with practiced aggression. "Mr. Fisher, you're a retired pharmaceutical executive with extensive knowledge of medications, surveillance techniques, and legal procedures. Isn't it true that you orchestrated this entire scenario?" "I documented a crime in progress. You created a fake bank account specifically to manipulate your family into incriminating conversations." "I created bait to expose their greed. The account was legal and empty. They chose to photograph it, discuss it, and plan how to steal it after murdering me. You pretended to be unconscious on Christmas Eve to eavesdrop on private conversations. I protected myself from people who just poisoned me. That's called survival." Harrison's voice rose. "You installed cameras without their knowledge. You recorded private family discussions. I leaned forward, my voice cold and clear, in my own home, recording people who were actively plotting to kill me. The law is very clear. I had every right to protect my property and my life. What law gives them the right to substitute my medication with the intent to cause my death?" The silence that followed was absolute. "May 5th, Ben testified. My grandson sat in the witness box, 19 years old, and crying. He described how Kyle had pressured him to film my collapse, how he'd been told it was just documentation for insurance purposes, how he'd only realized the truth when he heard them discussing timelines for my death. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Ben wasn't a co-conspirator. He was another victim. May 10th, Sharon presented her evidence. Professional, composed, devastating. She displayed the timeline, dates, times, locations. Every conversation, every forged document, every step of the conspiracy, laid out with forensic precision. Then May 15th, the expert witness, Dr. Martin Chen, pharmacologist, testified about metoprolol withdrawal. "For a patient with Mr. Fisher's cardiac history," he said, consulting his notes, "cessation of beta blocker therapy creates a rebound effect. Heart rate increases, blood pressure spikes. The risk of cardiac event increases 300 to 400% within 2 to 3 weeks. Given Mr. Fisher's age and condition, death within 30 days would be highly probable." "Not possible," Harrison interjected. "Probable." "Probable approaching certainty," Dr. Chen confirmed. The jury looked at Brooke again. This time several faces showed revulsion. May 20th, closing arguments. Rachel Morgan stood before the jury, her voice resonant with controlled anger. "This isn't a family disagreement. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a calculated, cold-blooded conspiracy to commit murder for financial gain. They substituted life-saving medication with sugar pills. They forged legal documents. They documented his supposed decline to justify their actions after his death. They discussed, in explicit detail, how to divide his money and property. Ladies and gentlemen, this is attempted murder, nothing less." Harrison's closing was desperate. "My client made mistakes, yes. She was drowning in debt, desperate for help. But she didn't want to kill her father. She wanted to—" "She wanted to what?" Rachel interrupted, standing. "Your Honor." "Sustained," Judge O'Connor said. "Mr. Harrison, please continue without speculation." But the damage was done. The jury had seen Harrison stumble, unable to finish his own sentence because there was no innocent explanation for what Brooke had done. June 3rd, the jury deliberated. 7 hours. June 10th, they returned. The foreman was a woman in her 60s, a retired teacher. She stood holding the verdict forms. "In the case of the state of Oregon versus Brooke Fisher Sullivan, on the charge of attempted murder, how do you find?" "Guilty." Brooke's gasp was audible across the courtroom. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder?" "Guilty." "Forgery?" "Guilty." "Fraud?" "Guilty." Brooke collapsed into her chair, her face buried in her hands. Kyle's expression went from shock to rage to something like defeated comprehension. For Stacy, the attempted murder charge was dropped. She hadn't directly participated in the pill substitution, but conspiracy and forgery? Guilty on both counts. I sat in the gallery and watched them realize what they'd lost. Not just their freedom, not just their futures, but the narrative they'd built, that they were the real victims, that I was the villain. The jury had seen through it all. 12 ordinary people had looked at the evidence and understood exactly what had happened. Justice. June 15th, sentencing. Judge Margaret O'Connor's courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows. Spectators filling every seat. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Brooke, Kyle, and Stacy stood before the judge. 3 people who'd conspired to murder me for money, now facing the consequences. Judge O'Connor reviewed the pre-sentencing reports, her expression grave. Then she looked up. Brooke Fisher Sullivan, the court has considered your case carefully. You attempted to murder your father, a man who raised you, provided for you, loved you, because you wanted his money. You substituted life-saving medication with placebos, knowing this would likely cause his death. You forged legal documents. You lied. You manipulated. And when caught, you showed no genuine remorse, only anger at being exposed. Brooke's face was white, her hands trembling. The court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison for attempted murder, to run concurrently with 3 years for document forgery. Possibility of parole after 8 years. Brooke made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Her carefully maintained composure shattered completely. 12 years. Her life destroyed. Kyle Sullivan, you were the architect of this conspiracy. You pressured your wife to commit murder. You manipulated your son into participation. You showed callous disregard for human life in pursuit of financial gain. 15 years for attempted murder, 5 years for conspiracy. Sentences to run consecutively. Possibility of parole after 12 years. Kyle's face went through a fascinating transformation. Shock, then rage, then something like broken comprehension. 20 years total. He'd be in his 60s when he got out. Everything he'd schemed for, gone. Stacy Sullivan Martinez. As a notary public, you held a position of public trust. You used that position to legitimize forged documents in a conspiracy to commit murder. 4 years in prison for conspiracy and forgery. Your notary license is permanently revoked. Stacy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. 4 years, career over, life derailed. Benjamin Sullivan, the court recognizes you were manipulated and coerced. 2 years probation, 500 hours community service, mandatory psychological counseling. Then Brooke turned to me, tears streaming down her face, mascara running, the polished mask completely gone. "Dad!" her voice cracked. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I never wanted..." I stood up from my seat, walked closer to the railing, separating the gallery from the court. Our eyes met. For a moment, I saw the little girl who'd cried when her hamster died. Then I remembered the woman who'd smiled while discussing how my heart would give out within 2 weeks. "You wanted my house," I said quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Now you have a house, a cell, 8 feet by 10 feet. You'll have plenty of time to think about what you tried to do." Her face crumpled. Kyle reached for her, but the bailiffs were already moving forward. "Defendants will be remanded into custody immediately," Judge O'Connor said. I watched them being led away, Brooke sobbing, stumbling, having to be supported by the bailiff. Kyle walking stiffly, his face a mask of suppressed rage. Stacy silent, tears running down her face but making no sound. They were gone. Finally, gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement prepared by Gerald. "Justice has been served. I'm grateful to the jury, the prosecution, and everyone who helped expose this conspiracy. Now I'd like privacy to rebuild my life." June 22nd, I met Ben at a coffee shop on Hawthorne. He looked thinner, older than his 19 years. Prison orange had been replaced with jeans and a jacket that hung loose on his frame. "Grandpa," he started, then stopped. "I don't know what to call you anymore." "Frank works." He flinched. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what they were planning, and when I realized, I was scared, and You testified against them. You told the truth. That took courage. They're my parents. They were criminals who tried to kill me. You chose justice over loyalty. That's not easy. I pulled an envelope from my pocket. Inside was a check for $5,000. What's this? First month's rent, security deposit, and moving costs. You need to live separately. Build your own life away from their influence. This is your chance to start over. Don't waste it. He stared at the check, tears forming. Why are you helping me? Because you're 19. Because they manipulated you. Because everyone deserves a second chance, if they earn it. Don't make me regret this. I won't, I promise. July 10th, I sold the house on Northwest Thurman Street. $897,000, $7,000 over the assessed value. The new owners were a young couple with 2 kids, thrilled to have found their dream home. I packed up my workshop, my antique clocks, the few possessions that mattered, everything else, furniture, appliances, the physical remnants of a life I'd shared with people who'd betrayed me. I left behind. I bought a townhouse in Northwest Portland for $420,000. Compact, modern, efficient. A place with no ghosts, no memories of conspiracy whispered in supposedly empty rooms. August 15th, I donated 12 of my restored antique clocks to the Oregon Historical Society. Pieces I'd spent years repairing, now displayed for people who'd appreciate the craftsmanship. I also began volunteering with a program for elderly victims of financial abuse. Twice a week, I met with people whose families had stolen from them, manipulated them, treated them as assets rather than humans. I helped them understand their rights, navigate legal systems, document abuse. I was good at it. Turned out that surviving attempted murder made you qualified to help others survive family betrayal. September 20th, Sharon invited me for coffee. Not professional coffee, just coffee. We sat at a small cafe, drinking lattes, talking about everything except the case. Movies we'd seen, books we'd read, the upcoming fall weather. You doing okay? She asked eventually. Better than I expected, worse than I'd hoped. That's honest. I keep thinking about Brooke at 7 crying over her hamster. Then I remember her discussing my death timeline. I don't know how to reconcile those two people. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe you just have to accept that people change, sometimes into someone you can't love anymore. That hit harder than I expected, but it was true. Thank you, I said, for everything, for believing me, for helping me. That's my job. No, your job was investigation. You went beyond that. You were a friend when I needed one. She smiled. Still am if you want. I do. October 15th. My new workshop was organized now. Tools on pegboards, clocks on shelves, everything in its place. I was working on an 1887 mantle clock, its mechanism exposed, gears and springs waiting for calibration. My phone buzzed. Text from Ben. Grandpa, I got the job. First day today. Thank you for everything. I smiled. My first genuine smile in months. Maybe my first since Christmas Eve. I texted back, proud of you. Keep going. Then I returned to the clock, adjusted the escapement, tested the mainspring tension, aligned the gears until everything meshed perfectly. When I wound it, the ticking was steady, rhythmic, exact. The mechanism worked. After being broken for decades, after sitting in someone's attic, accumulating dust and rust, after being written off as beyond repair, it worked. I watched the second hand sweep around the face. Steady, precise, unstoppable. Justice was like that. Sometimes it took time. Sometimes it required patience, documentation, and careful assembly of evidence. Sometimes you had to disassemble everything to find the broken piece and fix it. But when you did it right, when you followed the process and trusted in truth, the mechanism worked. Justice moved forward with the same steady precision as a well-maintained clock. Tick, tick, tick. Time doesn't stop for betrayal. It doesn't pause for grief. It just moves forward, second by second, giving you the opportunity to rebuild something better than what was broken. I set the restored clock on my shelf, next to 11 others I'd repaired, each one a testament to patience, skill, and the understanding that broken things can be fixed if you care enough to do it right. My life was like these clocks now, disassembled, repaired, running again, different than before, but functional, honest, real. The afternoon sun streamed through my workshop window, catching the brass gears of the 1887 clock. It gleamed like gold, like justice, like truth finally acknowledged. I had my house, I had my health, I had my life. They had 12 years, 15 years, 4 years to think about what they'd done. Fair exchange. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.